All right. Well, welcome to the Men Are Forged podcast. I got exciting guests today. I happen to know him, Mr. Cameron Doody, to sound official.
Boom. What's up,
Cam? It's great to
Cartwright?
have you, buddy. I know it's been a while, but it's good to see your face, and I'm looking forward to just kind of unpacking some of your story, man. Because I know I've been there for a few of them. So
Yeah. As we talked about, that could be a longer podcast.
Right. Those 4 years, well, at least 4 years for me. The 6 to 10 for you. Or sorry, 4 for you, 6 to 10 for me. You know.
No. If you think I graduated in 4 years, you're just dead wrong.
Right.
I took 5. Don't put that on me.
Yeah. That's right. Why would Cameron Doody, of all people, spend 4 years in college? That's insane. Real quick, do you remember when we did the zip line in the back of the Hall's house?
Yeah, of course. I always kill myself.
And somehow, why did I get to be the guinea pig?
I don't know.
I mean, this thing.
I don't know.
Were you there when it first got stuck? In the middle of the night?
Oh yeah. Yes.
And I'm literally swinging from 40 feet in the air, and I got to reach back to get to the platform.
I mean, it is a miracle that we are still alive.
It's like, what?
It's a miracle.
I mean, yeah. Anyway, we won't. This podcast is. Anyway, I'm sure our guests would probably love to hear it, but anyway. So Cam, yeah, man, let's start kind of a little, maybe not the very beginning, right? You were born, but give me a favorite childhood memory.
Favorite childhood memory.
You can even adolescence or even that,
I mean, I had a really good upbringing with 2 parents that were very loving and I think probably most importantly, like very supportive of whatever my brothers and I wanted to do. Like, there was no like parental meddling in, hey, you should play this sport or do that. They really just allowed us to make those decisions from early age. And then I was like in elementary school, I was like really big into the rainforest, and my parents just totally got behind it. And, like stuff that, I think stuff that some kids have to deal with like living up to a certain, I guess like categorical legacy or something. Like I just didn't have to deal with that at all. And my brothers didn't either. So, we grew up like climbing trees and building tree houses, and, we were just second the sun came up, we were out of the house and exploring and building. That was always something that our parents, we almost had they were very strict on spending money on basically anything other than like if we wanted to build something. So we were always building things. We'd build like huck fin rafts and all sorts of different things, and so I think that kind of foundation really led to all of my brothers and I kind of just having a deep drive to just create and build and think differently. I think one of the greatest gifts my dad gave me was he, at a very early age, I remember my dad telling me to think for myself and how much value original thought has. And, you should have opinions on things, and, it's okay that if your opinion on something differs from somebody else's, and you don't want to kind of look like the rest of the pack, it's, et cetera. And I think from early on, I think the 3 of us like really kind of understood that life was meant to be lived, with a machete in your hand, chopping through the jungle, and choosing which direction you want to go, and actually, experiencing the consequences of making the wrong decisions. And, that was another thing. We weren't really sheltered from a lot of, there wasn't like a fallback plan. It was just, we dealt with all the consequences that we got ourselves into. And I can tell you, I got into a lot of, trouble. But I think now looking back, I'm really appreciative of it because, it's, obviously it's made, you're kind of programmed pretty fully baked by the time you're 5 or 6 years old. And I don't know. I think my parents did a pretty good job, but I know I gave them heartache through my teens and through college, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But I'd like to think that I'm a real stand-up guy these days. I'm kidding.
Stand-up guy. Now, there's two things you really said that stood out, Cameron. One was just like growing up, being exposure to all sorts of different things. And I think how valuable that is. I know I didn't probably, my parents probably did expose me a lot, but really 20s, really trying to like meet people and value people from a different thought process to a different upbringing. I just remember my first time going to church in California and people wearing tank tops and they got tats going down their arm. And you're like, and I grew up, in the South going to church where everybody's got to wear a suit and tie to church. And you're just like, oh, and just being exposed to those type of people and those experiences and being outdoors. And I know that's something you really value. And the other thing was just thinking independently. That's something I love to tell some of my coaching sessions. My guys are like, man, you just got to take this time to start thinking differently than with the world around you. Because you just kind of when you get stuck in those silos, the fruit is very limited. So yeah. So, would you say your dad is one of your early influences and really training your thinking that's kind of led you to who you are today?
Yeah, of course. Absolutely. I think the gift of like giving us a license to hunt, to have original thought on things.
Yeah.
And I think it's so timely, like, today I don't care which side of the aisle you're on, these days, you're, for the last 10, 20 years, as media has kind of transformed into this much more impactful, powerful thing with social media and stuff. The vast majority of people are just like digesting thought. People are given opinions to just take. It's you turn on a TV and somebody will give you an opinion. And most people are just kind of taking that as like, oh, that sounds smart, I'll take that, right? But really, an opinion is not something that you steal from somebody else. An opinion is like, if you're looking at a wall and you're building a mosaic, an opinion is built like one little glass shard at a time. And you pick up little truths and you put it on the wall and you say, okay, that makes sense, boom. And then you finish that mosaic, and that's an opinion. It's made of a bunch of disparate, information that you've kind of put together and assembled yourself. And I think that is just so important, in a day when the news is just so homogenous, and thought is it's being pre-packaged for you, like how to think. And I think it's clear to everybody now over the last couple of years that we really need original thought. We need conflicting ideas and perspectives on a bunch of different things, and people should be free to be able to, make their own decisions in life. So anyway, that's not to get political, but I think it's just such a timely, topic.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can say, as someone who met you at 18, like that was very evident. For someone who did not, I was not that. I had it all figured out at 18, right? Had all the answers. And here's, Cameron, that you could kind of put you in a box of like, oh, this is just some like guy who's life of the party. It's like, no, you were much more of that. You were game for anything, exploration, trying new activities, which I imagine you've applied a lot to your life, because you just seem like you're a guy who loves just to fall forward, which is something like a message that I wish I took to heart way sooner than I did, of just like, let's just go for it and see what happens. And then if it doesn't work, we'll pick ourselves up and we'll learn from it and move forward. So where did you see that really applying? In college and then life after college?
Yeah, I think it goes back to, just being young and kind of having the ability to kind of take risks. Like I remember my parents like teaching me the concept of risk when I was like really young. Like I was probably 5 or 6 years old, and my dad was like, I was climbing a tree, and my dad's like, all right, let me teach you something. And he's like, do you know what risk is? And I was like, no. And he's like, okay, well, the higher you climb, the more fun it is, right? Because you're the higher you are, right? But every branch you climb up to, you know, if you do fall, the injury is going to be, you're going to get hurt worse, right? Uh, and that's not to say that you shouldn't climb higher. It's something that you just have to be conscious of, um, while you're doing it. You have to kind of be continually calculating, like, how much risk am I really willing to take here, and you just kind of be a realist about that. And so, I don't know. I think if I were to describe, I'd say most people that probably like know me uh, in sort of like a shallow way would be like, oh yeah, Cam's a risk taker, etc. I would probably say, like, there are things that really like scare me, that I'm very conservative and like risk averse towards. And then there are other things that seem really risky to other people, but to me don't feel risky at all. Um, and so I'll usually lean in really hard to those things that I feel like I kind of an innate understanding of, and the things that people would probably think that I would just do, like skydiving stuff. Like, actually, like, hate the idea of that. I did it once and I was like, I'm never doing that again. It was just felt like a cheap thrill.
Yeah. Huh.
And so anyway,
Funny, because I had a similar thought. Anyway, keep going. Yeah.
okay. Yeah. So, I would just say that has impacted the way I kind of go after, my personal life and business, and just like my interests in life. Like, I'm always kind of driven to always thinking about, what's the next exciting thing that I can put on my plate. And but kind of looking through the lens of, what am I actually comfortable with and what am I not? And the same thing goes with business, investing, and all these other things, where I feel like I have penchant for risk in certain categories that I feel like I understand, and then others, I can pull the ripcord on something pretty quick.
Yeah. It's interesting you said that, because I think there's a lot of our peers, Cameron. I mean, I'm finding through my community, friends, and even my clients, like, there's a mid-30s, like, looking around like, okay, I've got, some money, I've got a good nest egg, I've got a family, I've kind of got these checklists, I got a house, but occupationally I am bored and I need a challenge. Yep. And there's something, I think, that you're I would say, yeah, your personality. I mean, that happened to you, I feel like, at 25, maybe 10 years earlier. And because I remember, you were working, was it medical sales or something before? And then, just to kind of share the story of, what led to who you are now, and all the different things you're doing now, but what was kind of share that process and Bellhops and all that. So.
Yeah, well, I guess just go back to like college, thinking about, yeah, me in college, I was like pretty present, just say that, but to put that lightly. But, when I got to like my, later towards the end of my college career, whatever you want to call it, I was starting to think about, like, all right, what do I really want to do? And this was like 2007. The economy was booming, everything was going great, and then 2008 happens, everything just falls off a cliff, and no one was hiring, etc. I was actually, my first job that I had gotten my junior year of college, was I was supposed to go to Afghanistan for 2 years on a government contract, to work for this contractor that I'd worked for all through college. Oh, wow. And they, in that whole process, like, they froze international hiring and stuff. And so I was like, at the very last minute, I just didn't have any plan for what I was going to do, and nobody else was really hiring. I just, Hannah and I had just started dating, and a lot of my friends were just kind of like taking a year off, and I just decided I didn't want to do that. I just wanted to go ahead and get into something. And so my brother-in-law worked for a big, like, multinational bank, And he's like, I can get you a job at, BBVA. And I was like, okay, I don't care what it is. I just want to go do something.
Get
And
the
I ended
ball
up taking
rolling,
this
yeah.
job, which was, yeah. And like, keep in mind, like my expectation through college was like, I'm going to graduate. I'm going to make $500,000 a year in, commercial real estate, or I don't even know. But I had like big hopes. But now I'm in this situation where it's like, oh crap, I can't do, this is not going to happen the way I thought it was. And so I take this job at this giant, like 60,000 person bank, as I was like the guy that would repin your debit card in a retail bank. Like this bank was like in the parking lot of a mall, okay, in Brookwood, in Birmingham. And I had to wear a full suit, and I'd like repin debit cards and open checking accounts. And like my favorite part was like judging the guilt or innocence of somebody's like overdraft fee. That was like the highlight of my day. Anyway, long story short, it was hell. It was the worst possible job I could ever have imagined. Like, can you see me like in a full suit every day?
No creativity.
And
like, oof.
It's like, you could see who you see yourself 10 years from now, somebody 2 offices over who's just 10 years down the road from you at the same bank, and their eyes are like kind of glazed over, and they're like a caged lion, like they've just had just enough incentive to stick it out. And it scared me. It was terrifying. And I knew then, I was like, okay, I need to take this, I need to take my own independence very seriously. And I've never like pursued success for like money or like status. Like, I don't care. Those aren't the drivers for me. The driver for me is just freedom. I really wanted to be able to live my life on my own terms. And I knew in order to do that, you had to create, financial independence to be able to wake up every morning and say, what do I want to do today? Right. And so anyway, I did that for 1 year, like 1.5 years, like just long enough to where I had a line on my resume that wasn't, didn't make me look like a flake. And I left and went to a medical equipment company. We built that out for a few years. And about halfway through that was a much better job, better money. And, I had a lot more autonomy and stuff, but it still was it just wasn't my thing. And so that's when we kind of started moonlighting to build the early concept of what Bellhop was. And then ultimately we stepped away, went all into Bellhop, raised our first round of capital, and then spent the next decade building out, what is now the fastest growing moving and relocation brand in the US. And that was just an incredible journey where we went down the path of venture capital. We raised over the last I guess 8 or 9 years, we've raised just shy of 100 million in venture, and have built a really great company. And then right before the pandemic, the company had just become a larger organization. And that's really not where my heart lies. When you're optimizing a metric by 2 or 3%, month over month, there's nothing against that. It takes a very special person to operate a business. As acute as that. It's just not mine. As you can kind of imagine, like I like to take big swings and make step function improvements. And so we decided that we were going to go find somebody to who could take us to the next phase of growth. And that allowed me to step out of the day-to-day and put in a really great executive team. And then I was kind of unpotted again for the first time in 9 years. And I didn't know what I was going to do. Almost immediately, the pandemic happened. Everything kind of shut down. During that time, our original seed investors for Bellhop and my co-founder in Bellhop, we had this idea of building what we believe could be the future of early stage venture capital in what is now Brickyard. And so we, over the last year we've been building that out, and that has just been an absolute blast. Where we're an early stage venture fund. It's self-funded, so we kind of just pulled our money together, and we're backing between 20 and 25 teams from all over the world to move to Chattanooga. We're building out a private club that's serves as a big workspace, really cool workspace, and then private gym, common area lounge, guys, girls locker rooms, sauna, steam, cold plunge. It's basically a place that you never have to leave, because that really matters in the early days of a company. Is just it's like how much distraction you remove from your life, and how much focus can you give to building this thing. Because every early stage company that's going after product market fit it's like an impossible thing. And everybody that finds product market fit is like basically done the impossible. And that just takes, commitment. And so we're building this place where we have this community of founders from all over. We have all these kind of amenities that we're supporting these founders with. But we're also there every day too, helping these teams, negotiate terms and, work through hiring decisions, firing, that sort of thing. So anyway, we have a big vision for it, and we hope that this becomes a thing where kind of exited founders all over the country decide to go in and start something really similar to Brickyard. And I'd love to see a world where early stage founders are kind of traveling around like fighters going to training camps, like traveling around, getting to meet these different clubs, communities, whatever you want to call them, and then kind of falling in with the community that they vibe with most, and taking capital from them. So anyway, that's what we've been working on, and been a ball.
That's really cool, Cam. So like really you're wanting to help those who are in this, you're serving the people that used to be you, like the early stages of trying to get capital, and also like yourself, like you're, as much as you were wanting to grow the business, you were wanting to grow personally as a husband, as a father. And so you're trying to keep a place where less thoughts into the business can be compartmentalized. Is that kind of what you're saying? Yeah. And so, give me, go ahead. What are you gonna say?
Well, if you think about founders 10 years ago, were just these kind of neurotic types that had a problem that they just had to solve, you know? And that was really the only incentive, other than obviously, building your own company, whatever. But today, founders are like celebrities. Like you go raise like a $3 million seed round, and you're on like the cover of Forbes, or founders have been kind of celebritized. And the problem with that is it's bringing a whole new kind of level of distraction into the mix, where people are getting into it for like a line in the resume, like the status sort of thing. It's like a signal of something interesting, and so it's bringing a lot of people into the mix that really have no business in the first place going after and doing something like this, just because if you're not in it for the right reasons, you're just not, it's not going to work. Because it's that hard. And so Brickyard is an attempt to kind of go back to the early ethos of, everybody here has picked up and left their life behind. And they've come to this training camp in a city where they don't know anybody. And they have a community of founders that are all hammering on totally different things, since, under one roof. But everybody's just going a million miles an hour. And so it pushes everybody within those walls to go harder, go faster. And you're not having to deal with politicians calling you, wanting to go on their podcasts, and you're not having to deal with, journalists wanting to talk to you. You're not dealing with like investors that are constantly like, trying to stay on top of everything. Like you're in an environment where you can put your head down and focus. And that is so important for that first stage of the company, which is we call the golden days, but it's like pre-product market fit, where everybody's working 1,000 hours a week. you don't have all the answers. You're totally naive to what problems, are coming. And it's just it's like the beginning of the hero's journey.
Yeah.
That makes it's very special. So we're trying to just like really encapsulate a place that honors that, segment of company building.
That's so cool. So in your first stages of Bellhop, what would you tell your younger self going through that? What would be your advice to him?
Oh, I mean, we made 10 million mistakes, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we could stay on this call for a year and we wouldn't get through everything. But yeah, I think the main thing is like there are a handful of things that seem obvious, but really change, the risk profile of any early stage startup. One being like founder communication. You have so many things going on in an early stage company that it's really easy to just stop communicating with your co-founder because everybody has so much to do,
right,
that you're just kind of like hyper focused. And the problem there is very common problem with founders is you one day you diverge by 1% on the vision for the company, and the next day it's 2 and 3 and 4 and 5. And if you don't talk in a couple of weeks, and like one of you decides kind of, in their own mind, a certain approach to how you're going about doing something, and you're not communicating with the other one, by the time you actually sit down to talk about it, you're so far down the line that the other person's just not even willing to hear it. You do that like 100 times over and over again, and the relationship just breaks down. And so we have a therapist at Brickyard that's going to work with our founders that, just get them to talk, just go to lunch every day and don't talk about the business, just talk to each other, talk about your feelings and your thoughts. And, so it's things like that. It's like, and then there's like more tactical, early stage founders have so much to deal with that, you would think something like managing your forecasting and budgeting, that's like for any business, that's like priority 1 or damn near close to it, But in the early days, like you can burn through a lot of cash by just not being intentional about your forecasting and planning. And so that's like a tactical thing. You almost have to remind these teams, like, what's your burn rate? How, are you staying on track with this? When do we need to start the next fundraise? And it's not because they're not, diligent operators. It's just because they have so many freaking problems that are on fire that you can neglect, some things that are wildly obvious.
Yeah.
So it's, anyway, I mean, I could talk for forever on, all of that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. It's funny. It's like, I think most people look to the idea of having a startup and starting a company, a business with their friends or people they know. And like collaboration is such the exciting part about it. And then like you're saying though, that sometimes it gets like, there's so much to do that you end up isolating yourself amidst the team. And
100%.
Yeah. Wow. So there's something you said earlier that I am kind of curious about. Like, it sounds like with the kind of towards the end of Bellhops, you're realizing like, I'm not a maintainer. I don't just keep you want to like the new idea, the forward thinking, the innovative thought process. When did you kind of recognize that about yourself? And, was there an event that caused that?
I think it was just apparent. It's almost like boiling a frog, the way you boil a frog is you just slowly increase the temp of the water, and, and that just happens, as your company is growing, like in a venture-backed company, your company is growing at an unnatural rate. The people in your company are growing at a natural rate, right?
Yeah.
And so that introduces its own difficulty, but like, and that's something else, we could dig into later. But the point being, as your company gets bigger, it's the classic, ship analogy. Like when you first start, you're like a little Sea-Doo, and you can just zip around and, you know, do a 360, you know, you do a 180 and just go the other direction. It's no big deal. Once your company gets bigger, it's just a big cargo ship, and doing the things that you want to do and, you know, need to be done in your company. You know, as a founder, it's like this feeling of like frustration. It's like this monster that you've created is so large that it's difficult to turn directions by any, you know, significant amount. And once you get on that path, you're just like, all right, I guess we're, you know, driving this thing from New York to Cape Town, and you know, that's what we're gonna do. And I know what I'm gonna be doing in a week and 2 weeks and 3 weeks. And I'd rather, you know, anyway, so I'm more drawn to, you know, I guess I'll give this analogy. When you're building a company, it's like shifting. It's like going through 5 or 6 gears in a sports car. Like first gear, your RPMs like wind out, like what? And then once you're at red line, the car's not going to go any faster. It doesn't matter how much gas you're giving it.
Right.
You got to shift gears, right? And so that's like, you wind out first gear, and that's when you can't optimize first gear anymore. In order to get to second gear, you got to shift gears. And so that's like a step function change that you have to make. And then when you shift in a second, you're like low RPM, nothing's going quick, but like spend the next amount of time like winding through second gear until you get to the point where it's like, we could continue to optimize, like we could get an extra like 100, you know, RPM out of this thing, but what we really need to do is just shift gears again. And so that's this process of kind of winding out every gear in a startup, where you have to, you know, you have to constantly kind of like be burning things down and rebuilding things, as opposed to just optimizing. Like startups don't grow through like an optimized line like this. They grow through like boom, boom, you know, and then once you get big enough, it just becomes an optimization game. That's just not my, it's not what makes my heart sing, Cartwright.
You do like to sing, so there is that, right? So backtrack a little bit. There's something that really stands out to me still about your dad teaching you about risk. Did you feel, you know, a lot of guys, I feel like they don't get that until they're in their 20s or 30s, that have somebody come alongside them and like really, you know, put their arm around and say, hey, keep going. This is how you manage this and this and take this on. Was there somebody for you, you know, in your 20s that kind of helped you through some of these big decisions and help you think through a lot of the big things in, you know, I mean, even just moving to Chattanooga and all that, because I know the company was started in Birmingham. So.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I kind of look at the last 10 years of my life have been like sort of a J curve. And in the beginning of all this, you know, I really relied on my older brother a lot to help me kind of think through. You know, we're talking like before the first check in Bellhop, like working through, you know, he was really good at just kind of helping kind of keep me centered around what I need to be, how I need to be thinking about this, that, and, you know, just providing like a trusted sounding board. So that was like really important. And then, you know, as the company kind of scaled, you know, what is great about the venture process is every time you raise a new round of funding, now there's somebody that's around the table that's brand new, that has one of the biggest voices in the room, because they have more company or money in the company. And that's typically in venture like an 18 to 24 month, you know, process where you raise a round, and then you get, you know, you go along and you raise another round, et cetera, et cetera. And as your company's growing, like the person that was really impactful to you, like your seed investor, was really impactful for you for like the first 18 months of the company. You know, fast forward 7 or 8 years, like your seed investor is now like not advising you on operating this big company. They're just kind of a friend, right? And somebody that you've shared the trenches with and that you respect and love. And And so it's almost, it's a relay race. And so you're kind of like constantly taking on new people that are going to really like stretch you and pull you and challenge you and make you really uncomfortable. And then, and then eventually they will kind of take a backseat to the next person that comes in and just does it over again. I mean, creating a venture-backed business is punishment. I mean, it's just continually being just hammered into the ground, but yeah.
It's good. To make it redeemable in all things, right?
Right.
So give me a little bit more like, so speaking of, it's justlaybrick.com, right? If anybody wants, just curious about what you're doing and all that. And so, how do you see your role there? And basically, how do you want to serve your former self?
I mean, our intention now is build the best community of early stage founders in the country. Build the best place for early stage founders to build. And this is like this totally new kind of thing where, because we have invested in this really awesome physical space, we're like kind of building a fraternity of sorts, like a co-ed fraternity of sorts, where we can provide these amenities and take these kind of burdens off of our founders' backs. And but we're creating this like really bonded group of people that are all in these like really kind of what I was saying, they're all getting hammered in the ground, right? Like growing a venture-backed business is just suffering. It's just continued suffering. So we have this kind of ethos at Brickyard where we're kind of providing some comfort, but we're also like really leaning into like this idea of suffering. So like, that's why we have like a steam and a sauna and a cold plunge. Like that stuff's like not comfortable, but it's good, right?
Yeah.
And so we're trying to kind of balance this situation where we're building a place that's just improving the odds of our founders by taking some of the guesswork out of things and bringing together the right people at like natural competition between our teams, et cetera. And so I'm going to be in there with my partners every day in a just totally hands-off way where there's no programming, there's no like demo day that ends in. We're just there curating the community. I mean, we're literally like servants. Like our job is just to serve all of the founders that we have brought in any way that we can. And that's really exciting to me because, none of us can go jump in any one of their trenches and start fighting, right? Like that's all on them. Like they have to do that. But what we can do is kind of help provision them and just be accessible to talk through things, and I think that really isn't that prevalent, particularly today in this work from anywhere thing. A lot of companies are raising rounds. Their investors are spread around the country. And like, as a really rudimentary example, like, one may be like, should I incorporate in Delaware or in Texas? And like, they're not going to send an email out to all their investors to ask that question because it's kind of a stupid question. It's not a stupid question, but it's a 1 second answer that, and so they won't risk that negative signal to assets. They may spend 2 or 3 days doing like a SWOT analysis on like what states are the best to incorporate in, when one person can just be like, just Delaware, just get it done. Don't even think about it. Spend your time thinking about other things. And that's another benefit of having kind of some seasoned operators in the building in a very like informal, non-judgmental way, just there to like, we tell our founders, like, I'm not a VC, I am a founder. Like I'm in my own trenches building out this community, which we consider very much a startup. And we want to make sure that our founders see us that way and not as some like ivory tower group that, is throwing lightning bolts down on them,
basically pointing out everything they're doing wrong and, but not providing any solutions. Yeah. What would you say
Exactly.
though? I mean, is kind of the number one problem you're seeing with people in startups and entrepreneurs? Is it that they're not willing to engage in that suffering part, that stretching?
I think that's a big one. I mean, it
Yeah.
kind of goes back, to, I think, particularly in today's day,
Mm-hmm.
with so many people that are drawn into startups for the wrong reasons.
Mm.
um they don't know how hard this thing is. Like, I give this example of, like, if you had a crystal ball, okay,
Mm.
and you could see everything that's going to happen from company formation all the way to where your company goes public and you make a bucket of cash, and all of that. But if you could see everything that had to take place to lead to that event, even knowing that event was going to happen,
Mm-hmm.
you would look at that crystal ball and you'd be like, screw this, I'm going back to the bank.
Yeah.
It's that hard, right? It's
Yeah.
that hard.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have to get out of this, like, current affair of, like, oh, we have to have work-life balance. You do not get into startups if you want work-life balance, because you will have none.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
You
Mm-hmm.
you have your company, and you have one other thing that you can think about. Okay.
Mm.
So if it's like the 5 F's: faith, family, friends, fitness, finances, or something like that,
Yeah.
you got two, right? And one of them has to be the company. So is it your friends? Is it your family? Is it your faith? Is it this? It's that hard. It's
Yeah.
that hard. And um and people just, I think founders are better suited knowing that going in,
Mm.
and having that expectation, so you can freaking gear up, put the armor on, and be like, yeah, I'm going to battle. I'm literally going to war. I know what it is, and I'm ready for it.
Mm.
That makes you mentally ready to take something like that on. If you're going in like, oh, it's a project, we'll see how it goes, I think it's got legs, like, you're dead.
Right.
You're gonna die.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's interesting because I don't know if you know Arthur Brooks is. He's an author. Wrote the book Road to Freedom, really good. Anyway, I heard him speak in an interview, and he said, "Happiness requires meaning, but meaning requires suffering. And if suffering, then that brings unhappiness. So if you are trying to avoid unhappiness, you are avoiding unhappiness. You're avoiding happiness. It's like,
Yep.
so the suffering brings the meaning though. And that's what
Yep.
most people aren't willing to just engage of, like, man, I want more purpose. It's like, well, you got to have some suffering too.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So we're kind of running up on time, Cam, but also curious, this one popped in my head is, someone 10 years ago who created a startup. What's the gap in technology of needing in a startup from where you started to where it is now, and how much of the technology is incorporated at Brickyard?
I mean, the exciting thing is, the way that I think about tech is, it's never been easier to start a company. Like, all the no code,
Mm-hmm.
products out there, the vast amount of resources, the people who've been through it, venture capital becoming more, pervasive in other, like in the South. Like 10 years ago, I didn't even know what venture capital was, right? And today, I think, the region is starting. So there's all kinds of tailwinds. The problem that presents is, it's just bringing a lot more competition into the space. Like, more people are, like, starting companies. But the silver lining is 80% of those people are in it for the wrong reasons, right? And so if you can just keep that North Star pure in your mind, and go into it with the right expectations in what you're willing to give for this thing, nothing's really changed. In fact, you have better tools to do what you want to do, and the competition, although there's probably more competition than 10 years ago on building this company, that I'd say the quality of founders is, like, lower, right?
Yeah.
Just because of that simple mindset of a lot of people that are getting into companies, starting companies today, have never even seen a financial downturn, like, ever in their life, right? Like, some of these 20-year-old, early 20s kids, like, 2008,
no idea.
Like,
Yeah.
they were, yeah. So for the people that are willing to put on that armor and realize really what they're about to get into, and are kind of centered mentally to understand what they're doing. There's never been a better time. There's absolutely never been a better time.
Yeah. Yeah. To that point, just even the podcast, when I started getting into podcasts 2017, there was 700,000 podcasts in 2017. I think now there's like 10 million. So it's insane. Just, technology and access and how easily people can get involved from the starting point. But you hit a good point, and you kind of hit on it, but I want to just clarify, so what is a pure intention? What is a quality North Star in a startup? Because like you said, there's so many people, 80%, like you said, do it for the wrong reasons.
Yeah. I think there's no way to it lives right here.
Right.
There's no way to define what that is. It's like, is there a fire that is burning inside of you? Okay, if there is, and you go into it with the right expectation of what it's going to take to really grow that thing, then you're going to be unstoppable. Because most people don't have that fire burning here. They're just like, oh, I need to start a company because that'll make me look good, or it'll make these people like me, or this this is like a stepping stone for what I want to get into venture later, but I need some experience starting a company. Like, they don't have this I am going to do this and I am going to win, right? They're doing it for the wrong reason.
Right.
Their
image, projection. Which happens. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that's good. That's good, Cam. Well, man, so where are y'all at right now? You said you want to bring in 20 companies to the space. Are y'all at 20 companies yet?
No, so we wrote our first check in May or June of last year. So we're 8 months into seriously going after this thing. We've written 13 checks now, 3 international teams: Montreal, London, Malta. We have a bunch, couple from the Bay Area, Portland, San Diego, New York, New Jersey, Austin, Atlanta, Birmingham. Right around 35, I think, founders right now. And so we're basically halfway deployed out of this pilot fund. And so by probably August, September, we'll be fully deployed. We're kind of at we're writing 1 or 2 checks a month at this point. And so it's happening really fast. Construction's going great. The community is really gelling, coming together. Our roles as partners is really becoming clear. We're just servants of this thing. We're like community purveyors. That's what we're doing.
You're cultivating the space. I could feel it. You're making that space better and better that's really cool. I feel like I'm getting the vision, but it's really cool what y'all are doing.
Yeah, it's going to be really neat. So anyway, so that's what we're focused on doing, and we'll likely go in a few months. We're going to kick off a formal fundraise to raise capital from outside investors to allow us to continue to invest in new companies. And we've got a phase 2. We've got the designs done for phase 2, where we're going to double the footprint. We're going to try to probably get into fixing the housing problem, where if we write a term sheet to somebody, they can just move. They have an apartment they can go right into. A year from now, it's going to be a totally different story, as all early stage things are. So
isn't that interesting? That's something I have to tell myself. This current situation is temporary. It's going to change. It's got to. Well, man, Cam, I appreciate you coming on, man. It was a blast getting to just hear more of your story and catch up a little bit and laugh a little bit with you. And good to see that, there's many parts of you that hadn't changed.
I love this. I hope no part of me has changed.
You're definitely a more mature version of yourself. Let's just say that. That's the best part.
Yeah, there we go.
You
There
know,
we
I think
go.
your girls are appreciative that you're not the same 19-year-old Cam.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, you're right. You're right. I'm appreciative for that too.
I think you're almost back to your playing weight when I first met you at 18, before all the late night Mama G runs and what was is it Hungry Howie's, the pizza? What was the pizza place you would just stuff?
Oh yeah, Hungry Howie's. Yeah, oh yeah. My diet in college. That's a totally different thing.
Yeah.
I'm surprised I didn't die. But yeah,
which
I'm
is
glad
so,
we,
yeah, it's just so funny. I have 2 beers now and I need a nap, you know.
Yeah.
2 beers
Yeah.
back then was a warm up. It was like, I'm just getting going. Well, I appreciate coming on,
Totally.
Cam. It's good to see your face, man.
You too, Cartwright. Take it easy.